There are things happening inside you every single day that you don't even notice, not because they're subtle, but because they've become familiar, too familiar. These things don't knock on the door of your consciousness. They don't shout for your attention. They don't rob you of sleep, at least not right away. But slowly, quietly, they begin to eat away at you from the inside out, not through physical destruction, but through spiritual compromise. Carl Jung once said, "What you do not make conscious will return in your life as fate." And sometimes that fate doesn't come crashing down as a dramatic catastrophe. Sometimes it shows up quietly as a small, invisible habit, something that seems harmless. In today's world, a lot of men fear the influence of pornography. And rightfully so, it rewires the mind, destroys discipline, and distorts your ability to connect in real life. But there's something that destroys you even faster than pornography. It's quieter. It's more insidious. These are the mental habits that steal your faith in yourself, the invisible addictions that blur the image of the man you're trying to become. They don't show up in viral headlines. They don't trend on social media. They don't get discussed in popular self-improvement challenges because they aren't sexy enough to talk about. And that's exactly why they're so dangerous. Jung believed that when a person stops believing in the light of the future, they're consumed by the darkness of old age. But the real killer isn't fear of failure. It's something worse. It's the quiet belief that nothing is worth the effort anymore. That kind of cynicism doesn't come from wisdom. It comes from wounds, from betrayals, from years of breaking promises to yourself. Every time you set a goal and abandon it, you don't just lose time, you lose trust. Every time you tell yourself you'll change and then fall back into old patterns, you're not just procrastinating, you're teaching yourself not to believe in your own words, and step by step, you stop believing in any new beginning at all. You no longer believe others will keep their promises. Even worse, you stop believing you can keep your own, and that belief, or lack of it, decides everything. You start delaying simple actions because you think it won't matter anyway. You feel uncomfortable around disciplined people because their focus reflects your neglect back at you like a mirror. So you begin seeking out people who are just like you, not to support each other, but to have an excuse not to change. Comfortable relationships built on shared stagnation become a prison, a wall that holds you in place. Jung called this the collective infection of the shadow. It's when the individual gives up their will and lets themselves get pulled into the unconscious current of collective resignation. But here's where it gets scarier. It's not that you give up, it's that you still think you're trying. You make plans, you read books, you imagine success. But in reality, you haven't taken a single step outside your comfort zone. This is the myth of good intentions. It's one of the most subtle escape mechanisms the mind creates. You believe that because you can imagine the goal, you're already close to achieving it. But in truth, that imagination just triggers a dopamine release, tricking you into feeling progress when nothing has actually happened. Jung called this identification with the ideal image. It's when you start to feel valuable just because you think about valuable things. But in Jungian psychology, that doesn't lead to growth. It leads to illusion. And if you don't recognize that illusion, it becomes your spiritual prison. You live more in your head than in the world. When someone asks what you're doing, you say, "I have plans." When you fail to act, you say, "I had good intentions." But Jung reminded us, enlightenment doesn't come from imagining the light. It comes from making the darkness conscious. That means you must have the courage to look directly at what you avoid most. Your procrastination, your fear, your lack of discipline. The paradox is this: when a man starts losing faith in himself, he doesn't retreat into solitude to heal. Instead, he clings to others who carry the same resignation in their eyes. It's not conscious, it's resonance. A quiet harmony between souls looking for excuses not to change. They tell each other life is hard, that not everyone can win. That effort is a form of self-torture if it doesn't bring instant results. These conversations don't heal, they justify stagnation. Jung called this a psychological infection of the collective unconscious. It's when the individual dissolves into the group to avoid confronting their own potential. And when you live in that environment too long, doubt stops being a reaction. It becomes a worldview. You no longer think of yourself as someone who's disappointed. You believe life itself is a disappointment. You don't just delay action. You believe action is foolish. And so you build invisible armor around yourself. You say, "I tried. Nothing works." But that's not wisdom. That's not insight. That's a fortress you've built around unprocessed pain. It's not a lesson. It's a wall that no new idea can break through. When someone says they're trying to grow, you smirk quietly to yourself. You think they'll see how life really is, but what does real life even mean? Is it life as it truly is, or the version you've accepted because you're too exhausted to fight for something more? Jung said that if you want to become yourself, you must break free from the influence of the collective. Breaking free doesn't mean rejecting the world. It means staying awake while everyone else sleeps. It means keeping the fire will alive even when the winds of collective doubt blow all around you. And that is not easy, because belonging feels safer than becoming. And if the price of belonging is giving up your dreams, most people will pay it in silence. They'll talk less about what they truly want, more about why it's not worth wanting. They become masters of risk analysis, but children when it comes to action. Because when you equate failure with shame, every step forward feels like a death sentence. That's why people choose silence over beginnings. Procrastination over visible failure. But Jung said clearly, this repeated passivity is the real failure, the failure of the soul. At some point, the shadow stops being something you integrate. It starts ruling you. You still laugh, you still talk, you still go to work, but you lose contact with the part of yourself that can grow. You live as if everything is already decided, as if you're a failure wrapped in pseudo-wisdom. And when this mindset becomes your identity, you'll defend it like a religion. You'll push away anyone who suggests otherwise. You'll secretly hope that no one around you succeeds too fast, because that would force you to face the truth you've been running from. Jung warned, the shadow becomes dangerous only when you refuse to recognize it. The shadow cannot be destroyed, but its power weakens the moment you have the courage to face it. And the shadow lives exactly where you don't want to look, in the people you surround yourself with, in the conversations you repeat, in the silence between the action you planned and the action you still haven't taken. You ask yourself, why do I feel like I'm trying when nothing changes? That's the trap. Intentions masquerading as action, planning instead of doing. In modern psychology, it's called a false dopamine reward. But Jung knew this long before neuroscience caught up. It's when the mind identifies so strongly with the ideal image of yourself that you start believing thinking is the same as doing. You imagine writing the book, building the business, changing your life. And every time you imagine it, you get a small hit of pleasure, like you've already done something. But you haven't. It's not you growing, it's your ego being comforted. And the more you think, the less you act. The more you feel like you're acting, the more you delay real action. This is identifying with an unintegrated symbol. You admire the image of who you want to be, but never take the first imperfect step toward becoming it. You keep redesigning your plans, creating new schedules, perfecting the strategy. But when the moment for action arrives, you whisper to yourself, not yet. Not the right time. And nothing kills self-worth faster than repeatedly breaking promises to yourself. Every later sends a message to your subconscious, you can't trust me. And if you do this enough, you won't need the world to doubt you. You'll do it for yourself. Because deep down, you'll know you'll postpone again. Why? Because planning feels safe. Imagination isn't judged. Thoughts aren't rejected. Jung said it best, there is no awakening without pain. Most people escape into imagination to avoid the pain of real action. But that means your success is also just an illusion. You're not living the life you want. You're living its mental simulation. And the most dangerous lie of all is believing you'll start once you feel ready. That day never comes. There is no perfect morning where you wake up fearless and prepared. Waiting for safety is the most beautiful trap your shadow sets for you every day. Jung wouldn't tell you to wait until you're ready. He'd tell you to start even though you're afraid. Because only action, not thought, breaks the illusion. Action proves you're not the image in your head. You're the man who has the courage to move forward anyway. This is the path Jung called individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself, and no one can walk it for you. But once you begin, no one can take it away from you. This is magnetic mindset. If this resonated with you, take one small step today, not tomorrow, not next week, today. And remember, it's not about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about courage, step by step. And the man you imagine will become the man you are.